Alright, so I'm just going to walk you through the notes for 10B using angles that are outside the circle, angles that are sitting on the circle, and angles that are inside the circle. Starting with the first one, this is your equation that you're going to be using. If you want to find the angle, you need to know the measure of the big arc and the small arc. What you're going to do is you're going to subtract them and divide by 2. So just so you can see this in each problem, notice here you have 2 tangents and the angle is outside. Here you have a tangent and a secant. Here you have 2 secants, but the thing that they have in common is that the angle is always located outside the circle. So to begin, you just have to make sure you can find the arcs. So if I look at each picture, the biggest arc will always be furthest from the angle. So this big arc right here will be this one. In the second picture, it will be this one. In the third picture, it'll be that one. If we go to find the small arc in each picture, this is your small arc, this one is your small arc, and this one is your small arc. Notice the arcs are only being used, or the ones you're picking, are only going to be inside the secants and the tangents. So you're not going to pick this one, you're not going to pick this one, and you're not going to pick this one. Only the ones inside the angles themselves. So if we attempt this on one of the problems down here, if we look at example 1, notice that we have an angle located outside of the circle, and to solve the problem, we would have to know 2 of the arcs. This one, which would be the smaller arc, and this arc, which would be the bigger arc. So if we go ahead and look at this, a couple other things we know is that all the way around for our circle would make 360, so we can actually calculate how large this one is. Start with 360, take away 130, take away 75, and you're going to be left with 155 degrees. So now that we know that's 155 degrees, we can now say that the angle will equal the big arc minus the small arc divided by 2. Again, big arc minus small arc divided by 2. Once you do this, I believe your answer turns into 40 degrees. Taking a look at the next problem. On your next problem, you have to find this arc, which is the small arc. You are given the angle this time, so it's a little bit different. And also different is we do not have the large arc over here. However, we know that this large arc, the one that would be red in this case, and we know that this small arc, the blue one, together make 360 degrees. So if, for example, this blue arc were, let's say, 100 degrees, then I know that the red arc would have to be 260 degrees, because the red arc would be 360 minus whatever that blue arc is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the red arc in terms of x. I know that the red arc will be 360 degrees minus x, minus that blue arc. So what I can do with this is I can take these pieces and I can put them in the order of the equation. Remember, the equation says that the angle will equal the big arc minus small divided by 2. Well, currently the angle is 50, the big arc is 360 minus x, and the small arc is x, so I can put each of those pieces into the correct spot, and now I have myself an equation. So the equation would say something like this. The angle is equal to the big arc, which is 360 minus x, subtract then the small arc, which is x, and I put all of that over 2. I can now solve this equation for x. If I were to multiply both sides by 2, that would cancel the 2 off, and that would turn my 50 into a 100. So I'm just going to get rid of that 2. If I do that, my new equation says 100 on this side. And on this side, it would say 360 minus x, which I could put both of those x's together and call that a minus 2x. So now I have 100 equals 360 minus 2x. I'm just going to make this a bit smaller. Alright, so if I keep solving, I can now subtract 360 over to the other side. And if I do that, I would have negative 260 on the left. I would have a negative 2x. Don't forget about this negative sign right there. When you cancel off that 360, you still have a negative 2x left. Be careful. So now I could divide both sides by negative 2, and I find out that x is 130 degrees. Alright. Next problem. If we take a look at the case where the angle is on the circle, equation for that is make sure you know the arc, and all you have to do is divide it by 2. So if you want this angle, you just have to know the arc inside of it. So take that arc, divide by 2, you've got your angle. We'll look at example 3 down here. I know then that this arc, since it's the one inside this angle, I know that that arc would be 140 degrees, because the arc divided by 2 equals the angle. So 140 divided by 2 will equal the 70 degree angle. To find x, I could use the whole circle and 360, or I could use the supplementary angle and say, well, I know this is 110, and then to find the arc associated with that angle, which would be this one, I take the angle times 2, and I get 210 degrees. 220 degrees. Either way you do it, you're going to get the right angle. In example 4, this is where we're going to be into the equation that says the angle's inside the circle. Notice neither of these chords are diameters, so you do not have central angles. I get some students that are confused between this concept. When you have a circle located at the center, yes, the angle is the same as this arc. When the angle is pulled all the way back, this angle is half the arc. But what we're talking about now is an angle that's floating anywhere inside of it and created by 2 chords. So it's not really half of it, it's not the same as it, but it's kind of like a combination of both. So what we're going to do here is we are going to use the 2 arcs associated with this angle. First one being this arc, and then the second one being the arc that's the vertical angle to it. So I know that x has a vertical angle with that angle, and I also know that that angle has this arc. These 2 angles will equal these 2 arcs, but the angles have to be the same and the arcs are going to be different. So how this works is if I were to say to you this arc is 100 degrees and this arc is 200 degrees, well, I know that 100 plus 200 makes 300, and then if I take 300 divided by 2, I find out that this angle is 150 degrees for both of them. Notice these add up to 300 and these add up to 300. The difference is these have to be the same and these other arcs do not have to be the same. They are definitely different sized. Alright, so let's try this down here. I should say this. A modified version of that equation is that 2 of the angles equal the arc plus the other arc, which is kind of the way I solved it. So if I take a look at this, I know to get this angle, it'll be the same as this angle, so I need to know the 2 arcs associated with it. If I want to find x, I know that 140 plus 60 makes 200. If I divide 200 by 2, I just found out that x is 100 degrees. Alright, that's it for notes for today.